Hi, good morning, kids. Hi, Hasha. Hi, Diana. Hi, Akil.
Hi, madam.
Good morning,
Hi,
Hi.
madam.
Good morning,
Okay,
madam.
good morning. So, how are you today? It's a public holiday in Malaysia today. So, by the way, Elliot, today is a public holiday in Malaysia.
Okay, cool.
So,
What is
yeah,
the public holiday?
it's Sultan Selangor. It's one of the event that we celebrate every year.
Cool.
Sultan Selangor, yeah. Okay, some are still connecting to audio. Yeah, Sultan Selangor's birthday. Because UITM is located in Selangor, so that's why today is our public holiday. Only in the state of Selangor, but not in the other states of Malaysia, only in Selangor.
But you still had to go to school.
Sorry?
But you still had to go to school on the public holiday?
No. We don't have to go to school, but for today we are having a slot with you, so that's why the students are very excited to attend your session today. It's a public
Okay.
holiday, by the way. They don't have class today.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to come.
It's okay.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. By the way, Elliot, in this class, I have about 40, I have 40 students in this class, actually. I have 40 students in this class. They are our future dentists. They are from the Faculty of Dentistry. And, but most of them are female rather than male students.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because in America, I mean, this is just from my own personal experience. I know more.
So we do have more, what about in America? You do have more female or male students in your university?
So in my university, there are more female students, but I was just saying, and from my experience, I know more male dentists than female dentists.
I see. Okay. Right. Hmm. Okay, right. Right. Um, so, are we ready? Can we start? So we have about 30 participants already. Okay, right. Before I start, let me introduce a little bit about Mr. Elliot's background. Okay, good morning, everyone. So I hope you are in a good health today. Before I actually introduce Mr. Elliot today, allow me to tell you about the purpose of this session. So Global Learning Session is aimed to enhance students' learning experience. It is personalized session where students are given the opportunity to engage with invited speakers from all over the world to expand their worldviews across geographical borders. So global learning is also one of the initiatives initiatives for innovative delivery highlighted in Education 5.0 at UITM. So this session is a collaboration between UITM Shah Alam Selangor and CG Global Learning, Center of Innovative Delivery and Learning Department, CIDL, Office of Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and International Affairs, UITM. So my dear students, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Mr. Elliot Dan Burgess. Okay, Burgess. So I have to announce GSJ, if I'm not mistaken, when last time I met you. Okay, so Elliot graduated from Free Hardeman with a BBA and an MBA in 2016. In 2019, he earned his Master of Art in English with a concentration in linguistics from the University of Memphis and is currently completing his PhD. So Mr. Elliot is interested in linguistic landscape, social linguistics, immigration and language learning, and the pedagogy of Mills Harton. Right? He has also taught ESL both domestically and abroad. So that is interesting. Okay, so without further ado, I'm giving the floor to you, Mr. Elliot.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's good to be here with in Henderson, Tennessee. So you can't see, but outside my window, it is dark outside. So it is 7 p.m. my time. So I know it's morning for you. So we're on opposite ends of the world. And I hope you're all doing well amidst COVID-19, which is a very interesting time to be a student. So yeah, I'm excited to be with you tonight.
Okay, right.
All right. There's a nice picture of me in front of some books.
Right. Shall I go to the next slide?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay.
Next slide. Okay, so I told you first, I guess, is I teach English at Freed Hardeman University, and I teach primarily writing, but I also teach American literature, and I've taught English as a second language as well, both in the Czech Republic and in Memphis. So I've actually taught with Nadia in the Czech Republic, so that's how I met her. So that is why I'm here, other than to teach you, but that's the connection. Okay, so if you look at the map, there's the United States. So most of the time when you think of the United States, you know, if you're familiar with maps, you see just the mainland down there. But America is also, if you look in the top left, Alaska and Hawaii. So there's two extra states that sometimes people don't think about when they think about America. And there are 50 states in all. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I work at Freed Hardeman University, and so that little red dot in West Tennessee is in Henderson, Tennessee, which is a rural area between Memphis and Nashville. So you've probably heard of Memphis, Elvis Presley, blues music, and Nashville, which is country music. So that's what it's famous for. So I live between those two big cities in Tennessee, and I've lived in West Tennessee for most of my life. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so here's a regional map of the US. And so as you can see, Tennessee is in the southern part of the United States. So it's highlighted in blue. So it's a long, slender state, but it's actually growing and quite. There was 100 people moving into the city every day. So that's quite a lot for a medium-sized city in the United States. So yeah, so it's a part of the U.S. South. So if you look to the left of the map, that's typically what people refer to as the West. So you might think of the West as cowboy or something like that. But so the west is New Mexico, Colorado over, and then the Midwest is kind of between the west and the south, and then the Northeast is where there's a lot of larger cities like New York City, Philadelphia, Boston. So these were some of the first cities that were inhabited when the English and other Europeans came over and settled America. So that's why the population is more dense in the Northeast, because that was the original settlements in America. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's a more detailed map of Tennessee. As I mentioned earlier, you can see Memphis, which is on the left-hand side of the screen, Nashville, which is in the center. Nashville is the capital of the state of Tennessee. And then Chattanooga on the bottom right-hand corner of the map. And then Knoxville, which is on the right-hand side. But so those are the four big cities in Tennessee. And so there's where the higher population is. And so, yeah, and so the red lines, which might be different than what you normally see on a map, is the roads. And so that's an interstate system. And so the interstate system was put into place by Frederick D. Roosevelt, or no, not Frederick D. Roosevelt, but Eisenhower, as a way for the military to move in and out of the country more freely. So that's why we don't have a very good train system. But so the military can move in case we ever got invaded, which I guess would be good if we ever get invaded, but it's not good if you like public transportation. So we don't have very good public transportation, but we've got a strong military. So. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, I went to the University of Memphis. And so Memphis is situated on the Mississippi River. And so the Mississippi River, as you look on the left-hand side of the screen, goes from the north way to the ocean. So it's a very large river, and it goes through many different cities. It's famous in literature. I don't know if you've had an American literature class, but if you ever do, Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. So the Mississippi River is a big part of that story. So that's something, if you're familiar with Mark Twain, he writes a lot about the Mississippi River. But Memphis sits on the Mississippi River. It's very wide, almost a mile wide. And so as you can see on the right-hand side, that is the downtown part of Memphis, which sits on the river. One interesting thing about Memphis that may be different than cities that you're familiar with is that most people do not live in that area that you see. That's mostly business, like banking, lawyers, white collar work is what we call it. But most people don't actually live in that area. They live in other neighborhoods outside the center of the city. And so you have to drive. And again, Memphis doesn't have very good public transportation, so you pretty much have to drive everywhere. And also that is the Hernando de Soto Bridge. So de Soto was a famous Spanish explorer, and so he explored this part of the area as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's a couple other photographs of Memphis, Tennessee, some downtown area, some downtown shots. So if you ever go to Memphis, the sunset's very beautiful over the Mississippi River. The top right picture, you can kind of get a picture of that. But yeah, those are a couple other shots. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I got my master's degree from the University of Memphis, and I'm currently working on my PhD there as well. And so this is kind of what the campus looks like. It's not in that downtown city center area that we saw earlier. It's further out in a more residential area. And so it's a very modern university, and it has not as many students as your school has. It has probably 22,000 that go to the university, with a variety of different degrees, tons of different degrees. And so it's a pretty modern institution. Okay, next slide. Okay. These are just a few. There's a whole list, but here's some people that you may know. So at the top left, you have Justin Timberlake. I'm sure some of you are familiar with him. He's actually from Memphis. Below him is Dolly Parton. So she's a famous country singer. At the top right, you have Megan Fox. So she's a famous actress. She's from Knoxville, Tennessee. And then on the bottom right, you have Miley Cyrus. So pretty famous musician as well. Those are just four, but there's tons of famous Tennesseans, but those are just a few. All right, next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I teach at Freed-Hardeman University. It's also the institution where I graduated from with my bachelor's and master's degrees. And so it's primarily in a rural area. As you can see in that photograph, there are tons of trees everywhere. So, you don't have to go very far and you're almost in a forest. And so the university has recently been renovated. And so, old buildings have been redone. There's been more green space. So it's beginning to be a much more beautiful campus than it was even when I was a student a few years ago. And you look at the first building that has that type of point, almost like steeple looking thing. That's actually where my office is. So my office is in that building, it's nice. It's a nice, new, renovated old building. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's another shot from the other angle. So this is the bell tower. So this is a new, I guess, building, a new architectural feature of Freed-Hardeman, and this is kind of on all of the logos of the school. So that kind of little arch is on pretty much all the marketing of Freed-Hardeman. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's some facts and figures about Freed-Hardeman. So again, it's located in Henderson, Tennessee, a very small city. It's a religiously affiliated school. It's actually a Christian school. So, you have degrees in, English, biology, nursing, art, business, all of the normal, but you can also get a bachelor's in like Bible or a master's in theology, Bible ministry, but you can also get a master's in a master's in education, master's in teaching, master's in business. Recently, we're offering doctorates in education. Again, it's a smaller school, so as you see on the picture there, 13-to-1 student faculty ratio. So pretty small class sizes, and then the enrollment is around 2,100 people. And then someone mentioned earlier, or we talked earlier about it, but there's 57% female, 43% male. So it's a much more female school just by the student body. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here are the different colleges that I mentioned earlier. College of Arts and Sciences, which is what I currently teach in, biblical studies, business, education, and behavioral sciences, and then an honors college where people will read like the great books. So like the Greek classics, so you have to get like a certain GPA. So you have to have really high grades, and then you go to those types of classes. And then again, those are our graduate courses. And then recently they've just added I think they're about to add a physical therapy graduate program. So that's something new. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here's why you're here. Here's what you're learning. So how to deliver an effective online speech, particularly in English. And so this is even more important now, since we've lived through a global pandemic. So we're all learning about Zoom and how to do speeches online because we do it more often. And so for you as dentistry students, you may need these skills for other classes, but also, if you're applying for jobs, you might be applying for a job where you no longer have to go in person to meet that person, but you may do it online. So these are important skills to learn. Okay, so we'll try to channel some of Ralph Waldo Emerson's muse, the important American writer. So he said, speech is power, speech is to persuade, to convert, and to compel. So the words that we use have power. We can make things better, and we can make the world better with just our language, and we can our speech and our words have power. So that's something to always remember. Okay, so here's kind of the overview of what we're going to learn. So the first thing, the first kind of 5 slides will be like what we look at before the speech. So what you need to do before the speech, your preparation. The second thing is we're going to learn about what we need to do during the speech. So when you're actually presenting in the moment of giving the speech. And finally, we're going to talk just briefly about what to do right when you finish the speech, so after the speech. All right. Next slide. Okay, so the first thing you want to know is your audience. So the demographics. For instance, if you are giving a presentation to children, it will be much different than if you're giving a presentation to your peers or people that are above you, so your superiors. So if you're giving a presentation to a child, you may want to be funny, right? You may want to make them laugh. You may want to get their attention. You may want to use more visual aids. You want to maybe, make it fun for them. So if it's someone, if you're applying for a job, you want to be very formal. You want to show respect. So this all depends on the audience. Also, gender. Different countries, gender is, different. So like, if you're in a Muslim speaking context, it may be different than if you're in an American context, or, depending on your context. Same with religion. So if you're in a primarily Christian audience, it may be different than if you're in a primarily Islamic audience. So those are things to remember when you're preparing for your speech. So you want to almost think in your head what the different types of people in the audience will be. So you go, okay, there's going to be someone like this, there's going to be someone like this, there's going to be someone like this. So prepare your speech for those different types of people that you will be communicating to. All right. Now, number 2. So you want to plan your speech. So you want to conduct research. So you want to be familiar with your topic. So in America, there's a phrase that we often use called wing it. So that means you didn't really prepare very much and you just did it without preparing. You don't want to wing it. Don't wing it. You want to be prepared. So if someone has a question, you have an answer to also during your presentation. Then you can immediately kind of remember, like, oh, I know this. So you can go on. So you don't just freeze up. So conduct research so you know your information. The second thing, so you want to organize your topics. So you want to make sure that they flow evenly. So you want them to kind of build off of one another. And so it makes it easier for the listener to know what's going on and where the ending point of the presentation is going. Okay, so you want a good organization. And the last thing, so you want to have an outline. So a good thing about an outline is oftentimes your outline can be used as like a PowerPoint. So for instance, like this. So your outline can actually be transposed to your visual aid. So it's not just useful for you, but it's also useful for your audience if you're giving a speech or something like that where there's an outline. And that can kind of give you a skeleton of what your speech is going to be about, kind of the bones of what it's going to use science words for dentists. So it kind of gives you the structure of what you're going to say. All right, next slide. Okay, plan interaction. So again, this depends on your audience. So, you know, if you're in a job interview, you may not want to, you know, play a game in your, you know, you don't want to play a game in your interview. But if you're teaching children, yeah, it's a good idea sometimes to play a game. So again, this depends on your interaction. In America, I'm not sure in Malaysia, but in America, oftentimes if people do interaction in their presentations, they'll use this website called Kahoot, Kahoot. And so you can do surveys and answer questions in that way. So that's a good resource if you want to have a planned interaction. Okay, next slide. Okay, prepare visual aids. Again, this depends on the reason why you're giving the presentation, but I'll give you a few examples. So there are different types of visual aids. So for instance, if I was giving a presentation on country music or Willie Nelson, I might have a record and so here's Willie Nelson, and then you talk about Willie Nelson. So you have this visual aid, and so people are like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Also, so if you're giving a presentation about a guitar, you could have your guitar, and you could play your guitar a little bit. Or if you're not talking about country music or whatever, you don't want those things. So you want all of your visual aids to have a point or a purpose. So at the beginning of this presentation, we had several charts and graphs. And so you could see like, okay, now I know where Elliot lives. He lives in the western part of Tennessee. I know exactly where he lives on the map. So that was one reason why we chose that visual aid for you. Okay, so those are some general ideas for that. The second thing, so be brief with words. So you don't want your whole PowerPoint to be filled with text. You don't want it to be a book because you don't want people to be reading the text while you're talking. You just want to have the main points so they can write down the main points so they can remember. But you want them to focus on what you're saying more than just copying the library book from the PowerPoint that you made. So you don't want it to be too busy. Also with color, you can do, a lot of people do the Steve Jobs way, which is just black, white, just something with a big contrast. So you don't want it with like swirls or like rainbow colors and just like all different types of things. You want it to just focus on the content. And then lastly, so be effective when selecting these types of visual aids. So again, always it has to have a purpose. It has to help you convey the meaning that you want your audience to get from what you're saying. All right, next. Okay. So you want to practice your delivery. So practice, practice, practice. You can do this with your roommate, your spouse. You can do it in front of a mirror, but just so you can get familiar with what you're saying. You know, sometimes you may go through your presentation and your words get your words get tied, your tongue gets tied, and then you go, oh, that didn't sound right. So you may have to switch your words or your wording so it makes it come out easier. But you don't know that until you practice. So that's one reason why you practice, or so you can kind of get used to saying it for if you're so that's something to keep in mind with practice. All right, next slide. Okay, so here's what you need to do during the speech. So you want to introduce the topic effectively. So you want to get attention and the interest of the audience. So to credibility. So at the beginning of this presentation, I said, hey, I live in America. So number one, I speak English because I live in America. Number two, I teach at a university. So that should give me some credibility. It's like, oh, he may know what he's talking about if they let him teach at a university in America and he's got a master's degree in English. So maybe he knows what he's talking about. But if I just pulled someone randomly off the street in America, they may not could help you very much. Everybody has different criteria, different skills and weaknesses and strengths. But when you're speaking, you want to establish your credibility on why you have the authority to speak on the topic that you're talking about. Lastly, you want to preview the main points. So this is kind of like the roadmap for your audience. So they kind of go, okay, this is where we're going. We're going down this direction. This is what we're going to cover first, second, third. So it's not about a mystery. You don't want to have like a grand reveal at the end and you go, okay, this is what I was going to talk about the whole time. No, you want to kind of build upon things. You want the audience to know what's going on. Okay. So mind your voice. So volume and pitch. So you want to be loud enough to where people can hear you. You don't want to scream at them because then people will get annoyed. You don't want to whisper because then people will get annoyed too. So you have to find that balance between being too loud and not being loud enough. Okay. And then you also want to have a good pace and a good speech rate. So again, if we're thinking about, speaking English as a second language, one good thing to always remember is try to speak slow. Try to speak slowly. Also, sometimes when you get nervous, so if you get in front of people, you may speak quicker than you realize. So try to slow it down. And so just constantly kind of remember that. For me, I'm from the southern part of the U.S., so I always speak slow. So that's easy for me. Okay. And then pauses. So you want to use pauses effectively. So you can use pauses to add emphasis, let them wait for a minute and then come back. So a lot of times this for emphasis, but also it can get the attention of the audience. So if they're maybe not listening and then you just pause for 1-2 seconds, they'll go, and then they'll look back up at you. You want to add some vocal variety. We all have these different habits. We'll say sentences in the same way. So try again. Because again, we get in these habits, but when you're practicing, you can catch yourself on some things that you repeatedly say over and over. So be conscientious about adding vocal variety. Okay. And then pronunciation and articulation. So again, make sure that you open your mouth, that you finish your words, and that you speak clearly. And so, depending, different people have different struggles with this. In America, especially in the South, we don't open our mouths very much when we speak. So that's something I had to like train myself when I started teaching. It's like, Elliot, open your mouth, man. Open your mouth. So that's something you have to constantly kind of consider when you're giving an online presentation as well. All right, next slide. Okay. Camera video angle. So you don't want to be like this because then they're like, why are you in my face, Elliot? Get out of my face. But then you don't want to be so far away that you have to get out binoculars to see the person on the screen. You're like, are they are they in the, where are they? I don't know. So you want to be kind of like in that example there, the more effective angle. Hopefully I'm modeling a good effective angle in my in my speech. So you want to make sure you get the right camera angle. All right, next one. Okay, so mind your body. So again, part of this depends on the context in which you're giving your speech or your presentation. So personal appearance. So as an English teacher in America, I can have a long beard. Nobody cares. Like I can just look like whatever. Nobody really cares. But if I was interviewing for a, bank job or something where you need to be more clean cut, I would probably trim my beard. But again, this kind of depends on the cultural context as well. So in Malaysia, you know your culture better than me, but there are different, cultural expectations. So if you're applying for a job for a dentistry, you probably don't want to look like me going in there applying for a dentistry job because you're like, that guy's beard, he can't fit it under his medical mask. So don't hire him. He's dumb. So yeah, there's something to consider with your personal appearance. May not be as much of an issue in Malaysia, but sometimes in America, sometimes people overdress for an interview. The context in which you're going into. So, I wouldn't want to wear like a really nice suit if I was applying for like a job working outdoors or something like that. So just something to keep in mind. Movement. So you don't want to be moving around a lot because you don't want to give people a headache from trying to follow your head around. Gestures. You want to try to use, body language that's effective. Um, so it can kind of help, especially when there's this like screen between us, so we don't really have this human contact. Body language can really kind of bring a more humanizing aspect to this kind of weird Zoom world that we now live in. Also with eye contact, you want to try to like make it look like as much eye contact as possible, even though we're looking at our screen. So what I do, I've actually did this before the presentation. So if you can look at all of our different little boxes, so sometimes it's on the right side of your screen or left side, but I put it to the top so it looks like I'm looking at the camera, even if I'm looking at myself. So that's a little trick that might help you. So try to put it at the top so it looks like you're really looking at the person, but you may be looking at yourself. I don't know. So that's a little trick. All right. Next one. Okay. And so at the end, you want to recap your main points. So I like to think about this like an airplane metaphor. So you're about to land, but you're kind of circling around before you land. So you're kind of getting ready, and everybody knows it's like, okay, we're buckling up our seats, we're getting ready to land. Okay, so you want to signal the end of the speech. You want to reinforce those main ideas so they remember, like, okay, why did I come to listen to Elliot speak or whoever? So you want those main points to come home at the end. All right. And then after, again, depending on the type of lead, okay, or what would someone ask me this? And so then you can kind of get an idea of what someone might ask. That way you'll be prepared. That way you'll be prepared if someone asks you a question. You're kind of like, okay, I thought someone would ask about this. That way you're not caught off guard. All right. Okay, so this isn't really to do with what we're talking about. But here's some
Or
fun facts.
Elliot,
Yeah.
perhaps can we allow some questions from the students, maybe if perhaps they have some questions related to presentations online?
Yes, I think that would be very good.
Yeah. Okay, so any questions from the students?
I have a question, Mr. Elliot.
Okay.
How do you overcome anxiousness before public speaking? Because I think most of us are struggling from it a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think just doing it will help you. Like again, just practicing it and doing it frequently helps a lot. Maybe practicing it in front of the mirror might help. And then also, one thing you can think about too before you do it, you go, okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, it's not the end of the world, because even like the worst thing that could possibly happen is you like embarrass yourself. Okay, like that's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it's not fun and nobody wants that to happen, but maybe think about, okay, what is the worst case scenario that can happen? And then that can kind of go, okay, like in the grand scheme of things, this is not the most important thing in the world. Even thinking about like COVID-19, like this is like a very small thing in the grand scheme of the world. So kind of taking some pressure off of you with like a bigger perspective. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Elliot.
Okay, thank you, Rosanna. So any other question from the student?
Hi, Mr. Elliot. So
Hey.
I have a question. About earlier you said about speech planning. You said is to make sure that we can answer the audience's questions effectively. But what if the audience asked a question that we were not prepared for, that it never even crossed our minds? What do we do then?
Well, what I would do is at first I would think, give it a few seconds and say, hold on, let me think of that. And then give it a few seconds and then give it your best answer. I'm not sure. Because sometimes being honest and saying, like, I don't know is better than making something up and it being a terrible answer. So that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elliot.
I just told you I don't know with my answer.
I mean, you said it's better to be honest, so that gave me an answer instead of just answering without
Yeah.
facts.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kaisara. So one more question, maybe one more quick question before we proceed to the next slide.
Hello, Mr. Elliot. I have a question. Is there any tips for us to deliver a speech without reading a script? Because we tend to forget everything when we are really so nervous. So I want to ask, is there any tips for us to be more effective in delivering a speech without reading a script?
Okay. So here's my first question for you. So are you as nervous if you were doing it in your first language, or is it mostly because you're doing it in English?
I think almost every speech.
So everything. Okay. Um, so again, you don't want to read your PowerPoint or your presentation, but you want what's on the screen to be useful for the audience, but also, for you, so you can kind of get like, if you, lose your train of thought, you can go back to it and say, okay, that's what I was going to talk about. So sometimes on like a PowerPoint, you get the main points on the PowerPoint, but you can type under it, like in a text box. So if you're doing it in front of a computer, you can almost have like a little script under it. So if you really mess up, you can go back and look at that. But again, I would also say, just practice a ton, and then try to just make it as simple as possible to convey what you're trying to say without demeaning the main ideas. But you want to make it simple. That way you don't have to constantly remember, difficult things. So try to make it as simple as possible. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Elliot.
Right, thank you. So let's go to the next slide, which reveals about quick facts about the US. Okay.
Yeah, so here's some quick facts about the US. So the first one is pretty ironic because Americans are pretty notorious for not learning other languages, but other than English, but America has no official language, which is pretty interesting. So America has no official language. Second thing, there have been 27 versions of the American flag. So, it's changed quite frequently. The Statue of Liberty was a gift. It was a gift from France. And there's actually a Statue of Liberty in Paris as well, which is not too far from the Eiffel Tower. But the idea of the Statue of Liberty was that it was a symbol of welcoming immigrants to a free land. So that was the symbolism behind the Statue of Liberty. Okay. So this is an interesting stat. So more people live in New York City than 40 of the 50 states. So New York City has tons of population, much more than most of the physical geography of America. Okay. And the last one, so Harvard was the first university in the US. So that's a fun higher education fact. So yeah. Okay, so here's some interesting facts or some ideas about dentistry that you may be interested in, since that's your field of study. So the first is the average salary is around $150,000, which is really, really, really good. So if you ever move to America and become a dentist, you'll be financially okay. So yeah, you make a lot of money. I don't know how it is in Malaysia, but in America, you do pretty good. But in the US, usually takes 4 years, about 4 years, so about 8 years in total. So this also may be different than in Malaysia, but typically schools like dentistry, becoming a medical doctor, physical therapy, a lot of the health related fields, you have to pay for yourself. So $150,000 that they have to pay to get the advanced degree. So with that salary, you're gonna have to pay off your school for a few years. So it's very expensive to go to dentistry school in America, just like most professional schools like law, all types. Luckily for me, I get mine paid for. But I also don't make as much money as a dentist. So, but that's another topic. Okay. And the last one. So most Americans need dental insurance to go to the dentist. So this again is probably different. So there's a lot of Americans that will not go to the dentist because it costs so much money. Ideally, you would want to get your teeth cleaned, once or twice a year, but a lot of people do not because of it being expensive. Sometimes jobs. So in America, your health insurance is based on the job you have. So like for me, I have good health insurance, but someone else might not have good health insurance. So it really depends on your job. I have dental insurance. I pay like 15 to 20, or no, it's not very much. It's like $10 a month for dental insurance. So if I go to the dentist, I don't pay anything. But if someone just has like a cavity, or has to have a root canal or something, and they don't have dental insurance, then they have to pay that out of pocket, and it will be much more expensive. So yeah, that's the American health care system is kind of a mess sometimes. No, not sometimes, all the time. You can get good care if you have good health insurance, but a lot of people don't have health insurance. So yeah. All right, next slide. Okay, so I was asked to talk about my Christmas tradition. So in America, Christmas is a pretty big deal. Sometimes people will put their Christmas trees up in early November, so very early. Growing up, we always put our Christmas tree up like the day after Thanksgiving, so which is like the 24th, 25th. It's the last Thursday in November. So at the end of November is when we would put our Christmas tree up. But most American homes have a tree in there. Often, families will get together on Christmas Eve, which is the day before Christmas, and then on Christmas Day. And then both on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, family members will exchange gifts with one another. And for children, children have Santa Claus, so they will go to sleep on Christmas Eve, and they'll leave out cookies and milk for Santa Claus, and then whoever the parent is will eat the cookies and the milk, and to look like Santa came. And then the next morning, the children will wake up really, really, really early, and they will go in and look at the gifts that Santa Claus has brought to them. And so children probably stop believing in Santa at like 9. So that's just a tradition. But yeah, I have a pretty typical American Christmas tradition of just getting together with family on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and just hanging out, maybe watching a movie, just relaxing with family.
Right, Elliot, perhaps we might have some questions from the students, perhaps related to Christmas celebration, and also how the job scope of a dentist in the US may be. So any questions from the students? Because actually, after these slides, we have a few other questions to be asked to the students. So perhaps, yeah, okay. So students, it's a time for you now to ask questions to someone who is having a different culture than us. So please find this opportunity to ask questions.
Also, to preface this, I don't know much about dentistry.
Okay, don't worry. Okay, right. Okay, questions from the students?
Hi, Mr. Elahi. I have a question. Where do you get the Christmas tree actually? Do you buy it from a store, or you go somewhere to get the Christmas tree?
Well, so that's a good question. So I've had real Christmas trees before, where you'll go to like a Christmas tree farm and they will like cut the tree down for you, and then you'll take it to your house, which is nice because it smells really good in your house. It smells like a Christmas tree. But the bad thing is that it's a fire hazard. So that's not good. It could fail from their attic and then bring it down at a month before Christmas starts, and then they will hang different decorations on the Christmas tree, so different ornaments, they may go on vacation and they'll get an ornament from that vacation and then hang it up. And then when they put it on their Christmas tree, they'll remember that vacation that they took with their family. And then typically, that you'll have something at the very top of the Christmas tree. A lot of times people will put either a star, which, is a reminder of the star that the wise men followed to see Jesus, or it will be an angel. So that's typically what is on the top of the Christmas tree. But yeah, mostly fake trees though.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, next question.
Sir,
Hey,
my name is Muaz. After the Christmas end, where the trees go?
where did the trees go?
Is it usable for next year?
So if it's a fake tree, you put the tree up and save it, But if it is a regular tree, it goes, you burn it or throw it away, whatever. It is dead by that point.
Okay, right. Next question. Any more question from the students?
Hello, sir.
Hey.
I want to ask, what's the dishes that usually prepared during the Christmas gathering?
So what dishes? Okay, so for Christmas, there's not typically like a set. I mean, every family has their own dishes, but it's not as like, I guess nationally, there's not something generally everybody eats like on Thanksgiving. Because in Thanksgiving in America, everyone eats turkey. But on Christmas, typically someone will have like either a ham or a turkey or some sort of like big meat, and then you'll have potatoes and then whatever else. But there's not like typically a dish that you'll have at Christmas. I mean, you'll have a lot of cookies and sweets though, probably more so than Thanksgiving, because it like but yeah, not like not a dish that every household is going to have on Christmas.
Okay, right. Thank you. So I think it's just the same in Malaysia, because in different parts of Malaysia we will have different kind of dishes. Yeah. Okay. During Hari Raya, yes, Hari Raya Aidilfitri, just like Christmas celebrations, but we celebrate here Hari Raya Aidilfitri. But in different state in Malaysia, we actually serve different kind of dishes. Right. Okay. Any more question?
I have another question. Mr. Layet, since right now is pandemic COVID-19, the Christmas tradition, the Christmas is going like before, or it's different right now?
Well, so this is, I guess, so what's interesting about America is, so like I said, we have 50 different states. And so with COVID, basically each state has its own rules, right? So like California may have a different COVID policy than Tennessee. So in the state that I live in, the governor, so the main guy of our state, he basically said, I believe that Tennesseans will do the right thing. So in that case, the mayors of each small city have different policies. So I can drive 30 minutes and there's a mask mandate, but maybe the place I live in does not have a mask mandate. So it's really very different all over the place in America. And so there's not really a great answer for that, because it will be depending on the family. So like one family may get together, another family may not get together. So depending on how they view what's going on, but there's not really, it depends on the state that you live in. So for my family, We may do something very, very small, so it'll be a little different than it typically is. But yeah, so it's going to depend on the family, honestly.
Right. Okay. So one last questions before we go to the following slides. One last question.
Mr. Elliot, I have a question.
Yeah.
For Christmas, how many public holiday do you have? Like in Malaysia, for Eid Mubarak, we usually have two days that one country will have holidays. But how about in US, the Christmas?
So it depends on where you work. Pretty much, or most jobs, you will be off on Christmas Day. Pretty much most jobs, unless you're like a nurse or a doctor or something. And most jobs you will be off on Christmas Eve. But sometimes businesses will close at like noon or 12 on Christmas Eve. So you may have to work part of the day, but you don't have to work the whole day. So again, this kind of depends on what business or job that you work for or job you have. So it may be a public holiday, but that doesn't mean everybody will be off of work. So that might be something that's different in Malaysia versus America. I don't know if did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much. So let's proceed to the next slide. So we have a few questions. Mr. Elliot has a few questions to be asked to the students. Okay, question number 1.
Okay, so the first one, what is the capital of the USA? No cheating.
Washington.
Washington.
Yes, correct. I don't know who said that, but good job. Nice. Washington, D.C. Okay. The second one, what two countries border the USA? What two countries border the USA?
Canada?
Canada and Mexico.
Yes, Canada and Mexico. Nice job. Canada and Mexico. Number 3, what is the largest city in the USA?
New York City.
Yep, you're right. And there's the Statue of Liberty. Fun fact, I think the Statue of Liberty is actually in New Jersey. Water. But yeah. Number 4, you may need to get out your calculator. So how old is America? Y'all are dentists, so you may be better at math.
I think 244.
Let's see.
244 years.
You are right. 244. So it was 1776 that we got away from England. Okay, number 5. This is a good one. Who was recently elected president?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe
Yeah,
Biden.
that's much better, isn't it? So yeah, maybe we will be in a better place in 4 years. So yeah, Joe Biden was elected president, and he was the vice president for Barack Obama. So the president before Donald Trump. Okay. Well, I think that's all I have. So Nadia just asked, is Tennessee a red state or a blue state? So do you know what that means, a red state or a blue state?
Don't know.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, you're probably sick of hearing about American politics. So unfortunately, Tennessee is a red state. But pretty much every big city in America is blue. So all of the big cities, mostly in Tennessee, are blue, but the rural areas are red. But yeah, Tennessee is mostly a rural state though. So it's red.
Right. Yeah, we are actually towards the end of the session already, but maybe Elliot, would you like to ask questions to the students related to the cultures, related to their life at the university maybe, or perhaps the students have some questions to Mr. Elliot related to studying overseas maybe. Perhaps one day you will have you will have the intention to go abroad and study overseas in Mr. Elliot's university maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, okay. Perhaps Mr. Elliot, would you like to ask any questions to the students?
Yeah. Okay. Was
Sorry, come again, Elliot.
if I was going to visit Malaysia, where should I go in
Okay.
Malaysia?
Okay, so anyone would like to answer to this question? Please suggest one place in Malaysia.
I would recommend KL, Kuala Lumpur.
Okay.
Langkawi also good too.
Okay. So what is there to do there? Well, if I was an American, what would I like to do there? I am an American, so it's not if I was. I am an American. What would I like to do there?
Well, if okay, Mai.
So curious.
You can talk.
Yeah, I think you would like to come to Kuala Lumpur because since it is the capital city in Malaysia, and we have sort of many attractions there. But if you would like to visit to have beautiful scenery, you can go to like Kuala Lumpur. You can go to like Langkawi or Pulau Rawa, Pulau Kapas. You have a crystal clear view, and the sea is quite nice there.
Nice. Okay. So next question, should I come to Malaysia?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yes, of course.
Definitely.
Okay, I have another question. If I was going to come to Malaysia, what type of food should I eat?
Nasi lemak.
I think there's too much food. There's too much to choose from.
Everybody, y'all might
We
be
have a lot.
hungry
You can
because you all got
China.
excited.
You can go to Mama.
For breakfast, you can have nasi lemak.
Nasi lemak. What
In
is
English,
nasi
they call
lemak?
it coconut rice.
Coconut rice. That sounds good. So pardon my ignorance. So I really like food. How does that compare to Malaysian food? Is it similar or different?
Is it between American food and Malaysian food?
No, so I'm ignorant of Malaysian food. So I don't know anything about Malaysian food. I like Thai food and I like Vietnamese food. So is Malaysian food anything like that or is it different?
We have our very own unique taste.
Okay. So
Yeah,
is it different?
it's it's definitely different. You can know the difference directly after you try it because we like to use spices.
I love
Pretty
spices.
much different from Thais and Vietnam.
Okay.
But
So do you use curry? Do you cook in curry?
yes,
Sir, have you tried durian?
No,
Then you
but
should
I
try
would
it.
like to, I guess.
But I
I like
don't
Indian
think you
food too,
like the
so but
smell.
I love spicy food. That's one thing I don't like about Thanksgiving food in America is it's not spicy. And so no good. I want some spice.
Then you will love in Malaysia because Malaysia have lots of spicy foods you can try.
Did you know this about spicy food? So I would eat spicy food and I would say, man, this makes me feel good. It makes me feel better than food that does not have spice. And I was like, why does it make me feel that way? And so I Googled it like any smart person would do. So I said, why does spicy food make me feel like I have a buzz? And so you probably know this because you're smart dentist students, but apparently when you eat spicy food, it tricks your body and that you're in pain. And so it releases endorphins. And so your body feels good because it thinks you're in pain. So yeah, that's about as scientific as I can get, but yeah.
Okay, so interesting exchange of
Yeah.
facts, yeah, between Malaysia and America. Okay, so perhaps the students, would you like to ask a few more questions before we end? It's just like it's really difficult to let you go, Mr. Elliot. So yeah, perhaps a few more questions from the students before we end today's session.
I'm just a wealth of knowledge.
Mr. Elliot, I have a question.
Okay.
Have you visited Asian country before?
No, I have not, but I want to. I've mostly been to Europe. I've been to Central America 2 or 3 times. But yeah, mostly Europe and Central America, but I want to go to Asia. It is high on the list.
So yeah, okay. Any question? Someone would like to say something just now? Go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Elliot. I would like to ask, where in America do you recommend us to go to visit if we have any chances?
Well, it depends on what you like. Do you want to go to a big city? Do you want to see nature? I mean, America has some very beautiful national parks that are some of the most beautiful in the world, especially in the western part of the states, like Colorado and Wyoming. Very beautiful. But I mean, you probably like New York City is really great to visit. It's one of my favorite cities to visit. Chicago's cool. I've never been to Los Angeles, so I can't tell you about California. I've never been to California. But yeah, I would definitely put New York City on the top of your list.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one very last question from the
Okay.
student.
thought it was going to be from your daughter. It's like, this is going to be a great question.
Okay, I think my last question will be from me. Okay, my kids always ask me, is there any snow in the US? What about the part, the area that you are actually living? Is there any snow during winter? And how thick is the snow? Because my kids are always interested when I talk to them something related to winter season in the US.
Well, so in Tennessee, again, it's in the southern part. But no, not yet. It's like, I don't know what it is in Celsius because remember, we are weird and we use Fahrenheit. But it's like 60 degrees here, Fahrenheit. So it's not very cold. But yeah, it hasn't snowed yet. Typically we get snow in like February or maybe March. So like a little later than we typically think of in our part of the country as winter time. But yeah, no snow. Sorry.
Right. So does Santa Claus exist?
Yo, he's in Finland, I think.
But not in America.
Not yet. He's still working on some toys right now.
I see. Okay.
He's trying to avoid getting COVID, so he's been really careful lately. So I think he's just hibernating and quarantining up in the North Pole. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's interesting. So I guess it's a very interesting session today. I believe that my students actually enjoyed the session. So many questions actually come from them. And I hope you do enjoy the session as well, Mr. Elliot. And we really hope that in the future, maybe we can invite you once again to talk to our students. Yeah, or perhaps one day, if you come and visit Malaysia, please do let us know. And we will actually, we will take you around. We'll take you around, and yeah, if we have the opportunity to go overseas, then we'll meet you in Tennessee.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Elliot. Hope to see you in the future. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Elliot.
Thank you, Mr. Elliot.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Elliot.
Thank you.